The Jenny's Revenge is my debut novel and follows a crew of women as they seek vengeance for the atrocities committed against them by pirates. Set during the golden age of piracy between 1650 and 1730, all of the pirates in it are real and some of the cruelest to have sailed the seven seas. To wet your whistle, here's chapter 17, where the crew go up against Francois L'Aulnay.
L'Aulnay's ship was now alongside the Jenny's Revenge and within boarding distance. The men looked up, confused to be seeing well-dressed women on the upper deck, instead of the Spanish sailors they had obviously expected. It was L'Aulnay himself who broke the silence between the two vessels when, in French, he cried out, "Where is your crew?"
"Sorry, sir," replied Lucy. "I don't understand what you're saying."
She said all of this in her best English upper-class accent, as Miss Jones had taught her, knowing that if the French pirate detected her own Spanish accent, his hatred for them would spell their death. "Your crew?" L'Aulnay asked once again, but this time in English, and clearly intrigued by the sight that lay before him. "Where are your crew?"
"They became ill, sir," Lucy answered. "We are all that remains."
"Ill?" the pirate questioned. "Do they remain on board?"
"No, sir. We, that is the crew at first and then ourselves, threw them over the side when they passed away."
As she answered, Lucy made little sobbing noises at the mention of death.
"We continued to do so until only we remained."
At this last statement, L'Aulnay and his crew exchanged glances, and, just as Smith and his crew had, their body language became a chorus of lust.
"Sir," Lucy called out to the pirate captain, "I beseech you, would you help a lady in distress?"
As she spoke, the rest of the decoy party slowly got into position. They moved into pairs along the rails of the Jenny, looking at once vulnerable, but alluring at the same time as Anne had shown them. "Captain!" one of the pirates shouted, barely able to contain his lustful excitement. "We should help them!"
"Yeah," came another voice. "We should go over and give them what they need."
More clapped and cheered at this last suggestion.
"Oui," L'Aulnay agreed. "Let us board this vessel and offer ourselves to these fine ladies."
No sooner had the words left the captain's mouth than the boarding ropes were thrown, their grappling hooks biting into the rails of the Jenny. As the two ships came closer together, Lucy and her boarding party put on a show of their relief and gratitude. Some bit their lower lip, whilst others waved, and with each gesture the pirates before them became more worked up. None of them recognized the threat before them. No sooner had the boarding planks touched down to bridge the gap between the two ships than feet were upon them, their owners eager to feast upon what lay in front of them. As those feet reached the halfway point, the girls at the rails braced themselves, bent forward, and brought their secreted arms to bear. The loads that erupted from the blunderbusses was as destructive as their report was thunderous. Those closest to the Jenny, who, mere seconds before, had been traversing the boarding planks, were turned into chum in an instant. As the lethal projectiles spread out on their travels, tearing through man and sail alike, the girls at the rails exchanged places with those behind them and unleashed hell once more. Those foolish enough not to have taken cover, or were in the belief that there was to be only a single volley, were decimated by the second wave. With a deafening ring of the blunderbusses in ears, the decoy party dove to the relative safety of the ship's sides, making way for the Jenny's own boarding party, who now flooded onto the upper deck, muskets primed and ready to take out any who had survived the horror of the blunderbuss. Those hiding out of sight may have truly believed that they were safe as they readied their counterattack. Any such thoughts were quickly torn away with their ship as the Jenny's cannon song gave chorus. Chainshot flew up through the decks, shredding everything before it, including the mainmast, which toppled almost in slow motion into the foremast, only coming to rest as the rigging of the two entwined it. As the crew of the Jenny stared at the ballet of the two masts, all jumped in surprise as the pirate ship's far side blew out in a cloud of splinters as those cannons aimed at the waterline added to the symphony of death. All who stood on the upper deck then watched, completely mesmerized, as the pirate ship started to slip beneath the waves. So enwrapped in the scene before them were they, that when the flaming figure of L'Ollonais swung from the mizzenmast of his own ship to the half-deck of the Jenny's Revenge, he went almost unnoticed. As the pirate landed, he drew his cutlass and looked like the visage of the Grim Reaper himself, so twisted with rage was his face that it truly resembled a screaming skull. His hair and clothes smouldered as if he were the living representation of his dying ship. He strode to the nearest woman, cutlass raised, intent on bringing it down in an overhead slash to cleave her in two. Isabel was the only one who had seen him, and with 2 loping strides intercepted the pirate's blow with her musket. With one hand clasping the butt and the other on the barrel, she arrested the blade before it could do any harm, but the sheer force of his blow drove her to her knees and very nearly chopped the rifle in 2. Realizing that he had the advantage, L'Ollonais pressed down on his cutlass, his spare hand going to the back of the blade to give extra leverage. The 2 combatants were evenly matched for strength, but the pirate had the upper hand in position. A grin spread across L'Ollonais' face, and he leaned over to Isabel, bringing his face into hers to ensure he could be heard over the din of his dying ship. He looked it in the eye, and calmly, all matter of fact, said, "Now, bitch, you will die." Seeing this as her only chance to try and regain control of the fight, Isabel spat in her adversary's face. The ploy worked and L'Ollonais eased off, just a fraction, but it was enough for Isabel to adjust the grip on her rifle and get her feet back underneath her. She wouldn't have believed it possible, but L'Ollonais looked more infuriated than ever. With his strength fueled by sheer fury, he bore down on his blade once more and was greeted by the crack from Isabel's rifle as it began to break under the pressure. Again he leant in, putting his face to hers, the smell of burnt hair and flesh almost making Isabel gag. "When this is over," the enraged pirate told her, his voice unnervingly calm, "I shall cut off your face and wear it as my own." Truly disturbed by the man's words, Isabel pushed at his cutlass, but as she did so, her rifle rotated in her grip, causing her to pull the trigger. The weapon that she had so carefully primed to ensure that it wouldn't miss fire now went off right in their faces. Both gladiators parted at the flash from the gunpowder. Isabel, who had taken the brunt of the blast, fell to the deck, clutching her face, howling with pain. L'Ollonais, who had merely been dazzled by the flash, stumbled back towards the ship's rails, blinking wildly in an attempt to clear his vision. This gave the rest of the crew on deck the opportunity they needed. With Isabel safely out of the way, 3 of the boarding party opened fire, their aim true, all 3 rounds hitting the man square in the chest. Not willing to take the risk that the crazy French pirate may have somehow survived the firing squad, yet another member of the boarding party charged forward, blade in hand, and with an almighty swing decapitated the man. Eyes finally clear of the effects of the flash, the last thing L'Ollonais ever saw were the boots of his executioners as his head hit the deck of the Jenny's Revenge.